Mr. Gretton, how are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. In fact, I've got a chronic toothache at the minute, mate. Really, really, really bad. So I think I'm going to have to go to the emergency dentist today. But apart from that, I'm okay. The pain subsided enough for us to have this conversation. So no
Well, I'm glad you
complaints.
said it because I've got a few smoothers and a lens sip next to me because of the change of weather.
I got the flu.
That's it. That's it.
But both fall into bits, mate. But look, Liam, I appreciate you making time to jump on the call today. Bit of a different call today because it's not just about you. I want to talk about your family and your dependents and the people that you look after and that you no doubt factored into the equation when it was that you was kind of looking at the next step in your career. So I'm really looking forward to kind of working out how things look from your side and how everything came together and the challenges that you overcame to get to the position that you're in today. Now, for anyone who's not familiar with you, Liam, who's not spoke to you in the past or seen you on social media, can you just tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, your family, and where you're at? That'd be amazing.
Yeah, so I'm on the Wirral Peninsula, which is the better side of the River Mersey. Um, I've been an estate agent now for, I'd say, 5 years. However, that isn't my actual career path. So ever since I was a boy, the only job role I ever wanted was to join the army. Now, I went down that route, and in 2017, I was injured. As I was transitioning out of the army, I just fell into property over a cup of tea. So I initially started off as a buying agent, started representing professional athletes, investors looking for properties, and then COVID hit. And we realized actually, instead of just acting on behalf of buyers, we can also market and sell these properties. And it was a local agent who, in all their wisdom of the bad skills of opening a door and sitting on the phone, that actually pushed me in that direction. Um, and it just escalated. And I absolutely love what I do day to day. I'm very passionate about it. In terms of me and who I am, I'm a family man. So I've got myself, my wife Laura, my little girl Elizabeth. We're just about to get a puppy. And running that alongside, well, I say running that, having a family and running a business at the same time. Yes, at times there's sacrifices, but in the grand scheme of things, it's the best decision I've ever made.
How old you little girl?
She's 4, going on to 18.
Tell me about it, mate. My Esme is 5, and I can't even tell you, mate. Like, I don't know what happened to my little girl who was very placid and relaxed and chilled. She's suddenly got a whole new perspective and attitude towards her father, that's for sure, over the last year or two.
Yeah, I'm definitely experiencing that as well.
So Elizabeth's 4, and how long have you been in business? How long have you been with eXp?
So with eXp, I'm coming up to the 3 year point. So I think February is my capping point or my anniversary. And yeah, that's February. This is coming up 3 years.
So Elizabeth was only 1 then when you first set the business up, so a
Yeah,
baby.
yeah. And she was pretty much, for me being English. Elizabeth was born 2019. I'd already been dabbling in property then, so she was pretty much born into the business as an up and coming negotiator.
Wicked. So what I'm interested to pick up on with this, Liam, because as we've kind of discussed off camera, and I've said this on more than one video in the past, I think that when you're a family person, mum, dad, or otherwise, it's interesting because your family, your dependents, your children, your partner, the people that we love, they're often a huge motivator. You want to have a better work-life balance. You want more control over your diary. You want to be there for the special moments, for the sports days, for the school pickups, for the parties. You want to be spending time together at the weekend. You don't want to be a slave to working 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week to line in someone else's pockets. We often want to give people, or our children, should I say, the futures and the lifestyle that maybe we didn't experience. So on one hand, having a family and having children is a huge motivator for why you'd want to do something like join eXp and build your own business. But on the other hand, it can often be a preventer because we're mindful that if things don't work out, not only is it our ego that's a bit bruised and a setback for us personally, we worry about how that filters into our family and those that we care about more than ourselves. So I'm interested to know, having a career in the army where you got a good pension, you've got a wage coming in every month, very different dynamic to running your own business as Liam Gretton, bespoke estate agent. How did your family dynamic play on your decision to move forward with something like this? Did it spur you on? Did it almost stop you? Did it make things easier, more difficult? What was the thought process and what were the considerations coming into to launch?
I I feel like it just comes down to one simple word: accountability. And there's nobody in this world who's accountable to my family apart from myself. Next door aren't going to go out and work and put food on my table. Next door but one aren't going to do it either. It's down to me. And I think everybody has to realize at some point in their life that they are accountable to how their life is going to play out. There's no beating around the bush there. In terms of going from being in a solid wage, having that kind of pension security, knowing that it's a career for life, to being injured and leaving, I was never planning on leaving. So I had to grab the bull by the horns and just go for it. In terms of launching the business with eXp, it's exactly that. Being very brutal about it, Ben. I looked at it and thought, it's £150 a month. What on earth have I got to lose? It'll be a few £100 if it doesn't take off in the first 6, 7 months. And I was happy to take that risk. As a family, we were quite lucky at the time that we were in a position where we could do that. But that doesn't mean that I didn't do stuff on the side as well. So my first sale didn't actually complete till I think it was 12-month mark and actually go through. So in the meantime, I was still working, splitting days up, being able to build the business. Ultimately, mate, it comes down to accountability. I had to do it because it's no one else's fault if it failed.
I love that, mate. And I think sometimes when you're starting off from that position, I don't know, the pressure really focuses the mind, right? It makes it very clear what you need to do, the actions that you need to take. And you know that if I'm not doing that, the outcome that I need for my family isn't going to come. So I think in some ways it can serve as a great fuel in the fire to make you do the work that you should do, even on the days where you don't necessarily feel like doing it. One question that comes to my mind, and again, I'm just mindful of the context of you coming in. So your career was taken away from you. You was probably, it was a shock. You wasn't planning to do that, probably quite emotional. You come to a point where you've now got a 1-year-old baby. Milk powder is expensive. You're looking forward to nursery in a year or two. We all know nursery fees aren't cheap. At that moment in time, why not go and get a job as a branch manager, as a valuer, as a neg, a senior neg, have a bit of security and go down that path as opposed to building your own business? What was it that drew you into, I'm going to do this for myself, as opposed to going for the comfort blanket of a wage?
I think I was in two minds at the time. So I remember applying for a national estate agency, didn't really hear anything back from it. I thought maybe that's just because my CV is very military orientated rather than sales orientated. Um, I just started looking into eXp. I looked at other models as well. I don't think if you're going to launch your own business, I don't think there's any harm in actually exploring other models. It's got to be right for you, and eXp was right for me, the same as it is for other people. Um, I think it come down to the fact that my whole career in the military, it was someone telling me where I had to be, when I had to be there, what kit and equipment I needed. And me being my own boss, I didn't have that. It was me controlling my diary. I had the autonomy to do what I wanted. I could build the business as I wanted, which then would mean the income that we'd be able to bring into the business was ultimately down to me. So if I didn't do anything, I didn't get the income. If I actually marketed the property and successfully sold it, I was rewarded for that. Whereas if I'd gone down the route of, being a valuer, being a negotiator, I wouldn't have been getting them benefits.
So you was, I guess, you was more excited about the upside and the possibility of what you could build and what could go right if you got it right, as opposed to being crippled by fear and pushing yourself into a path that maybe would have felt more safe in the short term, but the wrong thing for you long
Uh,
term.
100%. And I feel like a lot of people fear something that isn't going to happen, or they're worried about what the friends and family might think if they're going to go it alone. Ultimately, do it. There's no harm in trying, and people actually will appreciate and tip the hat to someone who's tried and failed more than someone who's just said they're going to do it and never do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's a question for you. Do you think that that step forward, was it selfish? Was it selfless? Or was it maybe a little bit of a combination of the two?
Hmm. I'd say a bit of a combination of the two, but I'd say more pushing towards the selfish because eXp provided me with that software I needed to build the business. But at the same time, the business is about me. It's my name above the board. It's my accountability. If it fails, everyone knows that Liam Gretton's failed. However, we've put the processes in place to minimize that risk of launching the business and it turning potentially into a failure. We've looked at where there's a market locally for us to build the business. I think, being honest, I think it was more selfish because I wanted it to be about me and what we wanted to build as a family. Um, but yeah, interesting question, that Ben.
I only asked that question because I've had this never really put forward as a quote unquote objection from people that I've been speaking to, but I've definitely had on multiple occasions when I've been speaking to mums, dads, and carers looking at this. They've researched it, they've asked all the basic ABC questions, they know the splits, the commercials, they've quantified the size of the opportunity and the feasibility. And when they get to that last hurdle, they're thinking, am I putting myself before my kids? Like, am I doing this for the wrong reasons? And I think that, I don't know, my perspective, mate, is that I think in life there's like different cups, right? That are all important. So you've got your health, that's important, right? You need to look after yourself. You need to nourish your body, eat the right foods, exercise, get fresh air, be in nature, feel the sunlight on your face. You need to look after your health. You need to look after your wealth. You need to earn a certain amount of money to be able to live a life, to not have stress, to not have financial anxieties, to be able to spend time with your children. You need love and relationships. You need to be close to your children and your friends. You need to spend time with the people that you love and you care about. But also, you need fulfillment. And fulfillment means that you need purpose in the world. You need to be part of something bigger than yourself. You need direction. You need to feel as though you're giving something back, that you've got something to get up for in the morning in a professional capacity. And I think those four cups are something that we should all be mindful of. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being a bit selfish, because if you're not fulfilled and if you're not feeling as though you've got a place in the world, or you're giving value, or you're helping, mate, that's a one-track path to making you a pretty miserable individual. And guess what happens then when you're miserable? You're also a miserable dad. You can't be asked going out and kicking the ball. You don't fancy doing the school run. You know, you show up in a worse capacity in other areas, and suddenly all of these cups start to deplete. So I think you gave a great answer there, mate. And I'm glad that you acknowledged it. It was to a degree selfish, because I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we all need to look after ourselves so we can look after other people. You can't pour from an empty cup, right? If you're miserable and feeling as though you're a failure in one area of your life, we can all see and probably experience, looking back at how we felt in the past, that can penetrate other areas for the worst.
I agree with you there. And I found, this is very common. You walk around any military base in the UK and you'll bump into someone, you go, "You all right, Ben?" And the answer you will get is, "Oh, shit, isn't it?" That is standard. Doesn't matter what camp you're on, that is the answer you're going to get. Now, I know people, I've been out the army, let's say 4 or 5 years now. I know people who are still in the army that I would walk past today, whether walking down the high street or walking through a military camp, who would still give that answer, but they will never change their own circumstances. And to me, they've not got accountability or even discipline as an individual to make that change. Now, the way I look at it is, I've got Laura, I've got Elizabeth. We've got a nice house, we've got a nice car. We live, as we say it, quite well. And there's people who would love to be kind of in our circumstances. But at the same time, I want to be able to give. I've always seen it, Ben, as I come from a background with not a lot of money. And I always felt that my mum and dad were scraping and skiving to kind of do X, Y, and Z for us. But I never had that lifestyle growing up. I would say my whole purpose is about changing my family's path. So many years ago, going into a bit of history here, I know I'm a bit of a history geek. So we did our family tree. and we had two brothers from one
I
family.
really, really want to do one of them. Mate, when we got off this call, I won't take you on this rabbit hole, but please send me the details of how you did it and who
I,
you employed or whatever. Like, I'd love to do that.
I will. But so we had two brothers in one family who married two sisters from another family. Now, one of those couples went on to become barons and lords in UK Parliament, and then my side of the family opened up Lane Gretton Estate Agency. So it's a total difference, and I think I'm that captain of the ship where I can give Elizabeth a whole new lifestyle that may not necessarily been there. We could have just fitted that mold of where I grew up. But honestly, it comes down to accountability. And it's funny because I was talking to another agent the other day, Steve Grundy, and he partnered with eXp from seeing my for sale board. And he just come out with it. He said, you know what, Liam, I went to a Tranmere game. I seen your board. And it sounds really cliche, but you've changed my life. And I was like, that's cringy, mate. I don't want you to say that. And he was like, no, honestly, you have. I think the overheads and the way the model's built and brokerage supports everyone, that it allows people to be a bit more accountable. It allows people to be a bit more selfish, a bit more disciplined to grow their own business. And yes, there are sacrifices here and there, but nobody in history has ever got anywhere without making a sacrifice.
Yeah. No, very, very true, mate. And what you just said there about Steve, like, it's going back to that thing about the four cups, like, how can you not feel fulfilled and happy and like you've done some good in the world when somebody says, literally, you've changed, whether you realized it or not, you've changed my life. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's so powerful. But taking this back to family, Liam, I just
Yeah.
want to pick up on something you said earlier on. So you mentioned that, it took you 12 months or so to sort of cash flow, and every agent's on a different path. Everyone has different rates of success. Sometimes people cash flow super quick. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. The average is about 6 months. So it's taking you longer than most to see that first bit of success convert from a pipeline hypothetical number in the cloud into actual tangible cash in the bank. So the first question, and I guess a question that other mums, dads and carers have got looking in, is over that 12-month period, with bearing in mind you had a 1-year-old going on 2-year-old over that period, how did you buy the milk? How did you buy the clothes? How did you put fuel in your car? Like, how did you survive for that 12-month window financially?
So I was quite lucky at the time, Ben, where I had a bit of kind of surplus cash that I could use, but that only goes to a limit. And at the same time, I don't just want to utilize that. I work part-time. So at the time, I was driving part-time for Eddie Stobart. Not the most glamorous job, but it put fuel in the car, it put milk on the table, for my cup of tea, which is great. Now, one of the big barriers I had, mate, was an agent got wind of this. Now, ultimately, the seller does not care if I'm driving part-time to feed my family or doing X, Y, and Z. They just want to know, have I got an agent who's dedicated to marketing and selling my property? And the agent in question tried to use it against me. I just called them out on it and said, no, you're talking rubbish. Give me a time and a day you want me to be at the house, and I'll be there. Test it. And I was able to kind of back up my position then that I was dedicated to it. But yeah, there's no harm in working part-time when you're building a business.
So did that, and did that income then that you was getting from doing the truck driving, was that enough for you to be able to sleep at night and know that, do you know what, if you hope for the best and you certainly work to get the best, but if everything goes against you, the world turns upside down, you don't get traction and you can't catch a break, if you list and sell nothing, zero, zilch, did you then know that, well, the money that I'm getting from my side hustle, to use a phrase that my son would use, did you know then that the bill's paid for, the mortgage is paid, you're okay, you're not living lavish, but you're okay, you're getting by?
At the time, yeah, it's a little bit of a security blanket. It wasn't a necessity to have it there, but it's a nice to have. From my point of view, I got to a point where I remember, I think I was driving up like the M56 or something, and I just sat there and I was like, why am I doing this? I've got so much to do when I get home. And I literally remember handing in the keys, and someone said, oh, Liam, you'll be in tomorrow? And I was like, no, mate, that's me done. What do you mean? I said, oh, I don't need to be here, pal. I've got some stuff on tomorrow, and that was it. Just walked away, and I've never been back.
But it serves its purpose, and I think this is one thing that people overlooked sometimes as an option. And I was very similar to you, mate. So not to make this about me, it's obviously we're delving into your story, but there's a lot of parallels there in that I'd sold my business years ago. The money that I had went into property, became asset rich, cash poor, no savings really. I was working minimum wage in a gym, getting by month to month, just about paying the bills. I had no place starting up a business at that point. The way that I did it was similar to you. So I started doing some consultancy work for an investment firm, did a bit of takeaway delivery driving because typically those hours were like 7 p.m. plus. So I'm not really going to be out doing property stuff at that time anyway in the dead of night. And that allowed me in the short term to just know that I'm contributing towards the household bills, right? So I'm putting something in the pot, I'm paying towards the mortgage. There's a bit of financial peace of mind. I can sleep at night effectively when my head hits the pillow rather than having financial anxieties. And then in every spare hour that I had, I just get super structured. Okay, well, if I'm working this day, at that time, and this time, that means that Sunday night, I need to print my letters out. Monday morning, they need to go through the post box or through the front door. Tuesday, I need to do this. Wednesday, I need to bulk film all my social media content. And again, going back to what I said before, I found that being under those pressures, whilst it's never ideal and it's never fun, maybe it's not even optimal, it does focus the mind. It makes you have that military-like structure to your week because you know that if Sunday night comes and you don't print your letters and get them folded and put in the envelopes, you've potentially just missed the window then to get your letters out the following week, to build the business, to get you away from the truck driving or the pizza delivery in my case. So I think it really focuses the mind. But I was having this debate with another agent and I said, I'm so glad that I did it that way because I wasn't in a position to take on more debt. Didn't feel like the right move for me personally. Not to say that other people can't, we take out debts to buy cars and 5-star holidays and, getting a business loan isn't the worst thing in the world. But for me, I wanted to look for a different way and doing it that way really focused the mind because I didn't enjoy doing those side hustle jobs. And my desire to improve my circumstances, get some time back, take myself away from those roles and be all in on the agency was a really big motivator. So I wouldn't have it any other way. But I was telling this to another agent and they said, Ben, for the way that I work, that's the worst thing. Like I'd have constant anxiety. I wouldn't be able to concentrate, pulling myself from one task to another. And in the case of that agent, what they did was remortgage 25 grand against the house. So they started with a huge nest egg. So they were very comfortable and they were able to give themselves a bit of a financial runway, some peace of mind, 6 months or so to just go for it, hell for leather full time. And they built a great business. So we both got to the same destination, just through two very different routes because we're two very different people. Where there's a will is a way. I think often you just need to be able to do the work and think outside the box a bit.
There is, mate, and I think I was talking to a friend the other day, and they said, "Liam, you've got balls doing what you've done," and I've never thought about it. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Basically, you've left a job role where you're in the army, you're deploying around the world, you're doing X, Y, and Z, to now you're marketing and selling people's biggest assets." I was like, "Actually, you've got a fair point." Now, the only reason I went down that truck driving route was because of COVID. The people I was representing in terms of buying agency, they weren't buying your, 2 3-bed terraced houses in Liverpool for 110 grand. They wanted to buy it at 70, 80, where they believed the market was at. I think you've got to make sacrifices. There's been nights where, so I find it really hard to switch off, constantly on the laptop, constantly looking at different marketing routes, what can be done differently, how can I engage with sellers and buyers. And it was like I was mentioning before, I ran an evening for buyers. We had 50 people turn up and all it was educating buyers about the market, but they've interacted with me since. Sit there writing letters, sending them out. You've got to make these sacrifices. And you're probably the same as me, Ben. You find it hard to switch off. There's going to be a lot of people like that. There's no harm in it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. And over that first year period, I'm intrigued to know, as the business started to grow, as you hopefully started to get a bit busier, but also at the same time as Elizabeth started to get older and develop more of a personality and, become a bit more demanding on your time and to get to that age where you can't just fog them off with a bottle of milk and rock them in the pram while you're catching up on emails. It's a bit more of a challenge sometimes to juggle these things. How has been building the business been alongside being a family man with dependents to consider? What's that journey been like for you over the last few years?
Um, it's been great because Elizabeth, well, she doesn't know any different, but I feel like she buys into myself and the business. So, for example, we've got yellow boards. Now, if we drive through our local area, she sees a blue board or a red board. All I hear in the back of the car is "boo." Yellow boards are great, and I love that. Absolutely love it.
That's
We've
class.
got a little song that we sing when we do it. Um, but yeah, it's that first year was a graft, especially when I joined the eXp because I was driving, building the business. I'd kind of had a downward turn in what the business was, but I sold a £500,000 property from an Eddie Stobart truck. Like I'd get a phone call from a client and I'd pull over and I wasn't bothered what anyone at Eddie Stobart said because this is my business. I couldn't care if your load was 10
Yeah.
minutes late, it's going to get there. You find these ways of going about things. Now, that first year of having a family building the business, I never set boundaries and I regret it a little bit now. So like Elizabeth was in preschool, she had the first sports day, but I had a client who was really keen of having a valuation, and I went, right, I'll go to the valuation. It's a guaranteed listing, and it wasn't. Like I'd given them all sorts. I'd seen them 3, 4 times. I'd had 6 or 7 points of contact, but they went with a high street agent. And I sat there and I was like, I've missed that opportunity. So now I set boundaries and I am a bit selfish. It's great when you're the business owner that you can set the boundaries and go, right, it's sports day. Listen, my diary's empty. If you need me, WhatsApp me, but we're not booking in appointments here. And you just find, and I find being that personal estate agent, people connect more. They really do. And they more understanding. They see you as a human. I've taken Elizabeth to properties with me, just as we're passing, we'll say hello. People want to see that. They don't want to see a shirt and a tie and a blazer and being formal 24/7. I personally don't think that works.
It's a great point that you raised there, mate, about setting boundaries because that is the biggest key. And it's unfortunate that you've had to learn that the hard way through missing obviously Elizabeth's event, but sometimes we need to experience things firsthand to understand and then be able to improve things moving forward. So it all happens for a reason. But I'm much the same, mate. The thing is, if you don't respect your own boundaries and have your own rules, then you can't blame anyone else for not doing either. If I suddenly think it's okay to ring Liam Gretton at 8 p.m. when you should be reading your daughter a story or putting her to bed, and you answer that call and you chat freely, suddenly it becomes okay to ring Liam Gretton at 8 p.m. It's nothing wrong with saying, look, these are my working hours, or these are my circumstances. This is when you can contact me. This is what you can expect. And I find that, and it sounds like you have from what you just said there, from our own experiences, people for the most part are very reasonable. And as long as their expectations are managed, they understand that you don't live to sell properties. They know that you've got children, you've got hobbies, passions, you've got kids, you've got things that you're focusing on that are taking up time and attention and effort outside of just doing viewings and hosting open houses. It's the time where you have a problem is when you say, yeah, I'll do viewings every Sunday, no problem at all. And then actually, when a viewing inquiry comes in on Sunday, you say, oh, I can't because I'm taking my little girl dancing. Well, no, you told me 2 days ago that you'll do viewings every single Sunday, no problem. So that's when you've got an issue. As long as you're upfront with people and we're all reading from the same hymn sheet, people will normally go along with what you say because, again, they're reasonable as long as those expectations are managed.
That's it. People are reasonable. And I think whether you're an estate agent now working in someone's business and you're employed there, or you are a self-employed estate agent growing your own business, if someone isn't reasonable, stand your ground because they're not the right client for you. And as much as a seller can drop you kind of like that and go, I'm marketing now with someone else, you should be able to do that to the seller as well. So don't be scared to do it. Set your boundaries and stick to them. Ultimately, that makes you accountable to yourself. It shows you
Yeah.
got discipline, but at the same time, you've got respect for others because that's one of the most important parts of growing a business, that you've got that respect for other people.
100%. And you don't want to be firing people willy-nilly. You hope that you get
No,
along with people. We're here to sell houses, and that's how we make money, and we feed our families and provide a better future for our children. But you're right, because suddenly once you've got a couple of bad apples in the car, and it sours your experience of running that business. You don't want a situation, and anyone who's watching this that's from a corporate background or they've worked at a fast-paced, or anyone who's just dealt with the public before, we've probably all had those clients where you see the name pop up on your phone and the first thing is, oh my gosh, you want to dive behind the couch, put your head under the pillow. You don't want to speak to them because you know it's going to be something negative. The more you can mitigate that and work with your kind of people, as wishy-washy as that sounds, the more enjoyable the business is because you're dealing with people who are on your page. You get up and you have a spring in your step, you turn up in a better capacity.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Rather than being like negative and bogged down and feeling as though you want to be doing anything but working, it completely changes your relationship with that business and therefore affects how happy you are, how you turn up, and how profitable that business actually ends up being. So it's a
So
really good
I've
tip.
got a scenario, Ben, that bounces off what you've just been talking about, but also bounces onto that kind of that boundary section. So I took on a property maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and a gorgeous property. It'd been on the market for 12 years with every agent you could name. Now, the amount of agents that give me a heads up to kind of say, listen, you're in for a long haul here. And I thought, no, I won't bother. I got on with the guy. Like, he was great. He was on my level, so I knew I could have just a point blank conversation with him. He'd take it where I think other agents hid behind the shirt and tie. I was away on holiday with Laura and Elizabeth. We were up in the Lake District, and I found out that he'd asked for an extra £10,000 half an hour before exchange of contracts. And to me, that's like, there's no ethics about that. Tried phoning him, wouldn't answer the phone. In the end, we had a conversation and we just said, what's going on? The buyers had already told him where to go. And at that point, I just kind of left it. I thought, because it's very easy having a squaddy mindset to tip over and tell someone exactly what you think. So I left it. But I lost sleep over that because, to me, that was like a £6,500 fee. It's a hell of a lot of money for a self-employed agent. And I was sat there going, losing sleep, waking up in the middle of the night. And then it wasn't long ago, he actually texted me and said, Liam, I think I'm going to remarket the property. Do you want it? And I just sat there and I thought, I should not be losing any sleep over any property.
Not worth it, is it?
And I just said, no, I'm full to capacity. And I was at the time, and he understood that. So we went with someone else. But yeah, you've got to set boundaries, and you've got to have that discipline to be able to stand up to your own morals, your own ethics, and live by it, and not just take on a property for the sake of taking it on.
Yeah, 100. And that's exactly how you build a business by design. And when you build a business by default, it's just not the same outcome. Like, it's just not the same experience. It's just not. And I think that's maybe we're in a privileged position because, you know, you and I sit here without the stresses of a £4 grand a month office, without a £5 grand a month payroll, without a 400 quid going out every month on rates and utilities and whatnot. Like, we've obviously got a very lean model, which means that we can sell properties as we please, as long as the fees are in alignment with what makes sense for us. And we can still make a lot of money by dealing with few people. But that then gives you the opportunity beyond the commercial aspects to be able to be a bit more selective and do things the right way. And again, going back to what I said about those 4 cups, you know, making sure you get your fees right is good for the wealth cup, but making sure that you're working with the right people and you're in a happy place and you're enjoying your work, that helps you be that better dad, that better parent, to have more time, to make sure that you're not missing, you know, the sports days or the nativity plays or whatever else you're going to be getting involved with. So it kind of overspills into every area of the ecosystem that is, you know, Liam Gretton's or Ben Moore's life. But mate, that's brilliant. I just want to say, for anyone listening in, any parents, mums, dads, carers, or otherwise, if you are interested in chatting to Liam further and finding out more about his story, his process, how he's built his business, maybe there's questions you've got that I've not answered or I've not asked, should I say, then you can find Liam's details in the show notes. And obviously, Liam, you're more than happy to take a call from any agent who's considering making a move, right?
Any day of the week, any day. Yeah, just drop me a WhatsApp, give me a call. I'll give you an unfiltered view. Ultimately, I said it before, Ben, it's accountability. If you want to grow a business, you want to be that brand, kind of name above the door, it falls at your feet. And yes, we do have to make sacrifices, but I tell you what, mate, I wouldn't change it for the world. It's the best thing I've done.
It's all, mate. Same, mate. And before we wrap up on the call, mate, one question I've got to ask. You mentioned that you've got a dog on the way. Tell us a little bit about that, the new addition to the
Ah,
family.
I tell you what, mate, my sellers have pulled my pants down here. So went went to a property on a market property advice meeting, and she had these two cocker spaniels in the back garden. And I just said, oh, they're lovely. Me and my wife have been looking, but we're going on holiday. We've got this, we've got that. So we kind of decided not to. And she just went, oh, I think they might be pregnant. 2 weeks later, they had a scan. And in 2 weeks, we get little Bruce. So he's joining us. But yeah, I'm excited for him to
Oh,
come.
mate, the lengths that you go to for an instruction.
I know. Look, luckily we've sold the property and they can make their own move. But yeah, I'm excited to get him. And the good thing is, so like these sellers, I talk to them like I'm talking to you. We're very transparent. To me, I find that sellers can become friends. And then they're not moving too far away. We've got the puppy they're expecting. We've got Elizabeth. Probably find that these are going to be sellers that we meet up with 2, 3 times a year to walk dogs together. And it's just from a Google lead, that one.
Mate,
Amazing.
amazing, amazing. Good to hear it, and good to see the family growing, man. You've not got a dog at the moment, have you? So this will be the first family dog, right?
First one.
Oh, mate, it's like another child,
It's
man.
a, it's a
It'd
cocker
be amazing.
spaniel as well, so it's going to have some energy. And I wake up at 6 to go to the gym, so I think I'm going to have to get up a little bit earlier, give him the
Get the
walk,
war
go and do
done.
my own session, and then crack on.
Oh, mate, you're going to be an Adonis.
That's it. That's
Okay.
it, mate.
Top man. Well, thanks for your time today, Liam. It was a pleasure
More than
catching up
welcome.
as I knew it would be. Appreciate that.
Perfect. See you soon, mate.
Bye, mate.